What's up, Surf City? Coach Anthony, Coach Doug here. We're coming at you with 10 minutes of a Surf City FitCast. All right, guys. Today, topic is we're going to talk about Doug's upcoming full marathon, and we're going to dig deeper into his brain, how he's training for it. I'm going to put my 2 cents in, kind of give background on how I've trained athletes for endurance sports and things like that, and we'll kind of compare and contrast each other's notes. We just want to provide you some education and a deeper dive look into our brains when it comes to programming for you guys. All right, so Doug, tell me what spurred on your interest in doing a full marathon.
Honestly, it's just something that was, as in the past, has been a huge passion of mine. I always told myself I didn't really have a sport that I trained for, and if I did, that sport would end up being running. I got really into obstacle course racing years ago. That led to distance running, distance trail running, and eventually, the completion of full marathons.
So tell me about your past with, because you told me the story and the background of what your venture into obstacle race running did for you and your fitness and your health.
Yeah, it was very simple. It was the first CrossFit gym that I ever worked out at. They had thrown together a team to do a Tough Mudder, which at the time I had never heard of. It sounded really, really cool to me. And what happened was I went to go sign up for it, and it was closed. So riding that crest of motivation and wanting to actually do that, I went looking for something similar and discovered something called a Spartan race. So I went ahead and I signed up for one of those. And then in addition, I also signed up for a couple of North Face events where it's been essentially running on hiking trails, which I thought would be really, really cool. And then just with those 2 things on the board, knowing that regardless of whether or not I trained for them or not, those races were going to come. I'd already paid the money. I was already pot committed. So that led to a shift in the way that I approached my fitness, because I had been CrossFitting pretty steadily, making gains, losing weight, but I wanted to apply my fitness in a very direct way, and I chose to just run.
Okay, cool, awesome. And then coming up, when's the last time you ran an endurance event, half marathon, full marathon?
Last year I completed 2 of a series of trail half marathons in San Diego as part of the Dirt Devil trail running series.
Okay.
And like I said, there was 2 half marathons, both in different areas of San Diego. Again, lots of hills, lots of great scenery, great events. But yeah, it's been a year or more since I've actually competed in an event.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't really done any 5Ks or any turkey trots, anything like that. I mean, once in a while, I'll just go, all of a sudden I want to get some miles in, and I'll go and I'll run a 6K or a 10K. But, it's not a regular thing now, but I want to make it into a regular thing.
Okay, awesome. And let's talk about, what are you doing to prepare for your upcoming, what is your training cycle look like?
Sure.
Weekly, bi-weekly, or even over 3 weeks?
Sure. Well, through CrossFit Endurance, I'm an endurance running coach. So a lot of my methodologies kind of comes from the school of Brian McKenzie, Doug Katona. I'm not following their site directly, just because I think it's difficult to do when you're a coach at a gym like ours, where we have our own programming, we have our own strength days and whatnot. So really what I do is I kind of follow their model for how often I'm running and what distances, with a couple of tweaks of my own. But for the most part, I still CrossFit in here almost every day. But as far as the running training goes, what it comes down to is 3 runs per week, every other week, and then on those opposite weeks, it's 2 runs, but those runs are longer.
Okay.
And to really sum up, I got it written down here. We can show you guys later, but to really sum up, it really just has to do with intervals. And again, whether those are short intervals, I'll just take you through it. So for example, on a Monday, I do some kind of short interval work, whether that's wind sprints, hill sprints.
Give us an example of a workout. What was your last interval workout?
Okay, yeah. So last Monday, my short interval day was 400-meter repeats. I did 8 of those, and you do it with a 1-to-1 rest ratio. So you time how long it takes you to run a 400, and then the exact time that it took you to run that 400 is how long you rest before you run another one. And the idea is you're supposed to run it, you keep continuing that pattern until you feel like your form or your pace or like your conditioning breaks down. So for me, the litmus for that is as soon as I fall about 5 seconds behind what I'm holding, I stop the workout. And it just worked out to be 8 intervals. Sometimes, some days it's 6, some days it's 10.
Okay.
But just being able to sort of do some kind of short interval work on a Monday. And then, so like I'll usually wait a day, sometimes two, depending on how my recovery goes. And then the next running workout will be some kind of timed distance where I'll say to myself, okay, today I'm going to run for 15 minutes, and I want to see how far I can go in that 15 minutes. Which is, sometimes that's 15, and and right there what I'm doing is that's a time priority, right? So I'm saying to myself, hey, I'm going to run for 15 minutes, maybe 18, maybe 20, and again, as I get closer and closer to the race, those time periods will extend up to but not beyond 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then I'll go ahead and I'll deload prior to the race, but that's my timed distance that I do. Right?
Okay.
And again, the last run for the week is usually some kind of a time trial where I say to myself, I'm going to run a 5K, or I'm going to run a 10K, or I'm going to run like a 6K. But the idea is I'm going to try to PR that distance. It's a known distance that I'm going to try and run faster and faster every time I come back around.
Yeah, so that's kind of like that idea of intensity comes into play a lot. I mean, I've coached a number of like pure runners, and they want to come do basic strength training and things like that. But a lot of what I've experienced with them is that they're just out there to put mileage. They don't care about the intensity and things like that. And then the individuals that have wanted them to blend is hitting certain percentages and things like that. Use a similar approach, but a little bit different in the actual detail. I use a lot of like very structured energy system training templates,
Sure.
Kind of using that conceptually into there. If it's 30 on, 30 off, or even progressing through something like that, like accumulating that and then dropping it off, and even using just zone 1 work, meaning like, hey, just go out for an hour jog, nice and easy. So one of the things that too is like we were talking about one of the clients, she's a running holic,
Yes.
And one of the things I had on a conversation with her was there's a few different things that you need to consider when you start running, right? First you need to have, you need to build up your aerobic system, right?
Yep.
And then you've got to prepare yourself. I mean, this is the thing that I have this little niche in me that's wants to help runners, because I see them just go pounding, kind of not training properly,
Just destroying themselves.
and then they have knee issues later on.
Knee issues, hip issues, lower back issues, all kinds of plantar fasciitis, you name it.
Yeah. So I mean, you have the ability, in general terms, you have the ability to breathe for that long distance, and cardiovascular, respiratory endurance to have that for the whole time. And then you have your actual muscular endurance to carry you through, so you don't cramp up. That you're prepared, your soft tissue's prepared. And then there's the actual the concept of just you need to prepare to be pounding for that long.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the things she attempted a full marathon and then turned around. I have no control of that part of the program. So full marathon, and then into within 6 weeks trying to do 3 halves in a month because it's some badge of honor. And it's it could be done, but you need to step back and take a calendar like this and start planning out a year at a time or something.
I mean, especially for somebody who isn't what we would call a skilled or a trained runner, somebody who hasn't really spent some time working on technique and really working on, what are my limits physically, mentally, and physiologically in terms of things like that sort of effort. That's a lot of volume. It's a lot of volume. Because again, I know the first couple of half marathons I ever ran, I definitely completed the last 3 miles with cramps in both my calves. And that comes down to another aspect of distance running, which is nutrition. That's a whole other 10 minutes. But it's being properly fueled for you.
We're gonna go over today. It's all right. 10 minutes was a guideline. So let me give you an idea. Like, if race day and your volume is going to be up here, right? The way that I explained it to her was like, you've got to block it off in 3-month cycles. You've got to, like, if you've never ran a certain distance, like, you've got to, like, ramp yourself up into there. And you just don't flat ramp up into there. You'll need to accumulate and then intensificate, okay? So you need to go through, like, cycles where you accumulate mileage, you accumulate volume, and then you drop that off, and then you can mix an intensity there, because you're not going to be during those intensification phases. You're not going to be pounding as much. So let's say it's like maybe you accumulate for 2 months.
Hey guys.
We're filming.
Oh.
Say hi, guys.
Hey guys. Just a fire
department stop by.
Huntington Beach's bravest, gentlemen.
Just a local fire, guys. Just
Started
All right.
Cool.
So we messed you up.
Give us. I mean, we said 10 minutes, but we might be another 5 minutes or so.
Okay,
Cool. Good. Hey, sorry about that. You never know.
Couple jokers here.
Yeah. So you might want to accumulate for 2 months or a month, or even just do it on, depending on what type of thing. It might be 3 weeks and then drop off for a week. Whatever you decide, and whatever the athlete. That's the key thing, is that the athlete. When you look at the athlete itself, it needs to be an individualized approach. Like, you need to know what the goal is and know the athlete, do the assessment, and figure out where the weaknesses is. Just like you were talking about yesterday, is watching somebody how they even stand. If you're functionally not there, and that's one of the reasons. Like, in our system, we have that basic thing down here at the bottom of our pyramid. Is function is like, we always go back to there, because that's the sound structure that we build upon. So getting back to this, sorry, bouncing around. So that sound structure, that when you run, that if you're not moving properly, you're not doing all that stuff, then that's going to carry over your run. But let's get back to the volume aspect. You build and drop so that you can have some recovery, and build in some intensity. Build and then drop, and then just keep doing this. And then once you get up around race day, we've stepped it up instead of just flatlined it up and just kind of like pounded our body into the ground. We went through a cyclical type of thing, some intensification, some accumulation, intensification, up and down, up and down.
Like a progressive wave approach, to your volume, to your training.
Yeah. So just so that you could. I mean, that's how I've approached it in the past. I mean, number of ways I've done it. Accumulated. Like, if it's a long, slow distance, one of the things I really like is just a zone 1. Just accumulate the mileage.
Oh, yeah.
Just easy. Just go jog. I mean, even if it's you're able to talk to somebody on the phone.
Again, like it's actually really cool you bring that up. That's something that I'll do. Not necessarily just me personally. I don't necessarily do that on concrete with my shoes on, but I'll get up early, on a day where let's say a Saturday or a Sunday, a day where I've maybe done this, or maybe I've missed a day. And I'll just head down to the beach, I'll kick off my shoes, and I'll just go. Just on that hard pack, I'll just count lifeguard towers for sometimes an hour. Just a nice, easy, just trying to get some sweat in, trying to get some breathing, and just that's almost like a purifying kind of again, upwards of an hour, sometimes more, of just kind of a nice, easy pace, like zone 1 you were talking about.
Yeah. So I mean, if you look at, I love the pyramid aspect of this thing. I'll just keep going back to that. Is that if we take it over here and zone 1, Z1, so that's very slow, relatively slow distance, slow intensity. Generally, you probably can almost talk during that thing. Is that if you build a bigger base down here, even with Z1, this should build up here your higher percentages even more. So if you just focus on the high, you're only limited. So, but if you go back and build a bigger base, then you're going to have the ability to perform at higher intensities.
Oh, yeah.
So one of my coach always talked about, you can't always be testing, you've got to go back and train. So if you're always going all out, right, and you're never getting back to the work to rest ratio, then you're not building that base. But if you can step back, like you've got to have that broad inclusive aspect. Like I take that aspect of broad inclusive fitness, and it goes into depth more about. I kind of broaden that over everything, like
Right.
movements, time domains, training methodologies. I mean, without just complete randomness, but using certain aspects of that, of like, let's say a like a more, because CrossFit endurance tends to be a little bit lighter on the volume
Yes.
and higher in the intensity,
Yes.
which is great. But I'm not criticizing. They produce results, but I take that broad inclusive aspect is that there is something in the long slow distance,
Right.
the traditional, what most people train for, and
Well,
go back and forth and kind of knowing as a coach, and that's the art of it, knowing as a coach when to implement what for that athlete.
And I think a great point that you just kind of key on is like the average person, somebody who's not going out there to try and win, marathon after marathon. The average person who, maybe is a semi-trained runner who goes out regularly and runs marathons and has built up the work capacity to do that. You watch the average person at their race pace, and it's essentially what we used to refer to in the military as the airborne shuffle. Like, they find a nice, easy pace. They're not necessarily, they're not humming, they're not moving, but they're able to sustain that pace for an hour, 2 hours, however long it takes them to complete that marathon and then finish.
Yeah,
So again, that's
just survival at that point.
well, exactly what that talks about. That goes back to what you're talking about with the base, your ability to stay in that area and not break stride. Like focus on breathing and just your capacity to sort of stay in that zone for prolonged periods of time.
Yeah, and if you look at kind of relative to who you are as an athlete, like you can argue that maybe everybody, lower trained athletes have to hang out down here more in that lower bottom of the pyramid, whereas higher trained athletes can run between the second bottom of the top tier of the pyramid and kind of on the top of the middle part of the pyramid. They can run at that like 90-95% for longer.
And I'm just getting to a point in my own training where I feel like that's my goal, is to get myself like out of that again, the top tier of zone one into I guess what we would call an attention getting or a respectable race pace as far as marathoners concerned. With the understanding that I'm not a marathoner, I'm a CrossFitter, so this is kind of it's kind of a hybrid type of training.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of talking about CrossFit, strength and conditioning, and blending this is a lot. I mean, a lot of runners, they can benefit. I mean, they've probably heard, hey, I need to do some type of cross training, but the one thing I like to focus on in the gym with endurance athletes is like traditional, more like strength training, more of the like
Deadlifts.
Yeah, powerlifting lifts, deadlifts, press, bench press, back squat. Just because this goes back to me to build this foundation. Like I look in this foundation, not only is function in there, but like basic relative strength is in there. So and a lot of posterior chain work. One of the things that works really, really well, it might have been just the athlete, but it might have been, I just kind of used a 10 rep max program for a few cycles on his deadlift. Just so that, hey, you're going to be using heavy load for 10 reps. And that's going to be, there's a mental aspect to that because like it's Olympic lifting. Do a 10 rep max and do 4 sets of 10 at 90% of the first part. And that was like, that really like
mentally tough.
Yeah, the first 3 weeks he couldn't do it. But when he would go run after that, like his runs, he was like, this is insane. Like the amount of
just PRing.
Yeah, I mean, he felt a lot different running because if you look at, this is the torso of an athlete, hips are down here and stuff, like if you're leaning at all, but you're going to have to stay for like this, and maintain, like you're going to have, you need that muscular endurance in the back, just in your rectors and things like that,
Sure,
just to hold yourself up for that long.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and you talk about like strengthening, like things like the posterior chain, the quads, the hamstrings, just your ability to go ahead and again talk about just the body's capacity to sustain that beating and maintain that pace over time.
Yeah,
It can never hurt to be stronger.
No, not at all. Well, all right, guys, we're just about out of time. We don't want to take any more of your time for today, but stay tuned for more tips, tricks, and other aspect around running and your fitness. and how to live that California lifestyle, just tune in. We'll see you next time. For more info, tips, and tricks on running or anything else involved in your fitness, go to CrossFit Surf City USA.com.